Patriots. Today we're about to tackle the P0333 code on this Toyota Sequoia. So if you're not familiar with that, it means we got to change the knock sensors, which is a giant pain in the butt because we have to go inside, take the whole top of the motor off, as we'll see here in a minute. Let me get this thing open. Kind of a pain to do with that. As y'all can tell here, there's a push bar and all that great stuff there. So all of this has to come off because they put the starter and the knock sensors underneath the intake. So we're going to be tackling that today, and stay tuned and we'll show you how it's done. Alright guys, so today's parts to be installed: 2 new knock sensors from Toyota, and there's your part numbers. These are the new intake gaskets. We're going to change that while we're in there. And then a new starter from Toyota as well. And I think you can see part number there. Alright guys, any of you guys have the same problem I do after lifting your truck that you can no longer reach? I know I'm not the tallest guy, but it does get very difficult when you're working over this bumper. So to get up in here now, I have to build a step stool. But here's a kind of pre-look at what we have going on. All of that stuff has to be removed so we can get down into it. Gotta take the whole front of this off as well. We're gonna do that next. Mostly we'll just be taking a couple clamps, this cover off so we can reach the clamp to the throttle body, and we'll just be taking the front off here to begin with. So stay tuned, we'll do that next. So we got the cover off. The next step is to get this air intake off. Now, right now I'm using a 10 millimeter. Get that broke loose. I'm going to pull some back lines off the back. And then there'll be a plug. Take that off. Set it out of the way. Go ahead and unplug this. Leave the air box, but now we'll start taking off the fuel rails and all the vacuum and stuff that we have to take off. Alright guys, to begin with, we're just going to start taking off the hoses and stuff from the top. This one, just pop that loose. Go ahead and pop this one loose while we're here. stuff from the top here. Next, we'll go back through the back. We're going to take off these 10mm bolts to remove the bracketry from the top. I'm going to go ahead and put these bolts back. Grab a couple more. Essentially just trying to get the wiring harness loose from the intake. I'm going to go ahead and run the screws back in there. I like to do that just because I know they're going back to the same hole that they came out of. A lot of times when you install these throw all these in the same bucket, they start to look All right, we're back over on the driver's side now. I'm going to take this 12mm off so we can get this loose. Put that bolt back where it goes. I'm not sure if that one's going to have to come off or not. I'll look when I get back there. All of this will stay together. I'm going to go ahead and take I'm going to come down here to the throttle body, and we're going to take this plug off. Just kind of push it back out of the way. That loose. We need to get this harness loose. Had to kick that air compressor off there, guys. I have this one sensor here that's kind of a pain in the butt to get to. that one. That one's kind of a pain, guys, getting to that clip. To put pressure on it to get it to let go is kind of a pain in the butt, but if you keep at it, I use the flathead screwdriver and the needle nose. Finally got it loose. I think I'm gonna go ahead and pull these coils. Having to take this off because I can't get the angle I need. Get the angle I need. On this side to get this intake off. Switch back to a 12. I'm going to start on the outside 2 bolts, then go to the back and take the back tooth. I'm going to work my way in. So there's a 10mm bolt in the very back of the intake that was kind of hidden away that I needed a ratchet wrench to get. That was holding the secondary air injection stuff on. But I think now we're loose now. Alright. So now need to figure out what else needs to come loose once I pick this up to be able to lay it off. Alright, it's up. There's one more clamp here on the front that is going down to the water pump that I need to get off before we go any farther. A little bit of coolant. I'm going to take one of these 10mm bolts, maybe a 12mm bolt, and block this off. Put this clamp back on to keep it from leaking anymore. There we go. And then there's another one underneath there on the bottom of the throttle body. Take it off. think just going easy and carefully moving the intake up, and I'm going to try to just lay it up over on its side like so. Shoo, buddy. So if you'll look, this is what we got going on here. So it looks like intake is quite dirty. We're going to take these intake gaskets out, which I'm glad I did. Went ahead and bought those new, put them back in. Clean this stuff up here. It's looking pretty cruddy. If any of you guys have any ideas on what will take some of that out, a good fuel injection cleaner or service, let me know. I've had very little success with those in the past. So what we're going to do first, before we do anything else in this engine compartment, is I'm going to plug all these holes up that go down into the block with some paper towels, so we can clean all this area up. We're coming in here, we're going to change the knock sensors, and we're going to change the starter, because we're already in here, and it's probably, yeah, it looks like the original one with at least 200,000 miles on it. We'll probably go ahead and vacuum out this compartment here and get it cleaned up before we start doing anything else. So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a second after we clean this up and tidy it up. Scrape these intake runners and stuff to clean them up for the new gaskets and just make them look a little nicer. So stay tuned, we'll be right back. Alright guys, finally got some light down here and we can look into this engine. Looking like, unfortunately, I'm going to have to take the secondary air injection stuff off to be able to get the starter to slide back. The reason I tapped into this is the P0333 code, which is the knock sensors needing to be replaced. At least I think that's what it is. But to get to them, they're underneath this. And then while I'm in here, there was no way I wasn't going to go ahead and replace the starter. This Sequoia has almost 200,000 miles on it. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the starter while we're in here. And once I unbolt that, it's going to have to slide back to disengage from the flywheel. And there's no way I can do that without this stuff being out of the way. So I think the next job is to tackle that. I've already unplugged these harnesses. They're pretty self-explanatory where they go. One of them broke in the process. Probably end up having to tie that guy back on and hope it lasts. If you know anything about Sequoias, this first gen Sequoia, the 4.7 engines, I think after 2004 they put this secondary air injection stuff in here, and it's really worthless. It does nothing. They make a bypass kit to get rid of it, which will probably end up happening now. We had no problems or codes out of it before, but I'm sure once I start messing with it, as old as it is, I'm gonna have some problems out of it after we're done. I'm hoping that once I get it removed and replaced, it will maybe not be a problem, but unfortunately, with the reputation that secondary air injection has, it probably will. I'm gonna go ahead and start trying to pull it apart. there's a main plate that holds all this stuff on. I'm gonna try to take the main plate loose and see if I can get that to come loose. And if I can get that to come loose and undo this hose and pull it loose and everything come off back there, I think I can get this part out of the way. And then I'm gonna have to figure out how to tackle in the back here. There's a cross tube back there. It looks like it's got some bolts in it where I could pull out and get this stuff out of the way so I can get to the starter bolts, which is not fun. So if you're planning on doing a starter job or knock sensor job on the Toyota Sequoia, it's not fun. So let's get to it. Here we go. Let's take some bolts out. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, secondary air injection system. We're going to be very, very ginger with this and set it very nicely over on the table. Right there. Please don't break. That came loose, very good. Please don't break. Come on, baby. Let's use the pliers. I'm gonna grab the pliers and give it a little squeeze. Please don't break, please don't break. Come on, pop loose that one. There we go, nice. All right, that is loose. So now we have access to the knock sensors that need to be replaced. And now we need to get back there to that starter. That pipe is also not beautiful. I do plan on doing a secondary air injection bypass on this thing, so I'm not super worried about it, but it does make me a little nervous. Just a little bit. Because we were not having any codes out of it, but now that we've taken it apart, I'm sure we will. Because this stuff is just old and brittle. Like, this pipe is not grand. I'd like to be able to get that off and replace it. I don't know if I can, but because it's just so sticky old and stuck. So, next item up for business is getting back to the back and trying to get this loose, which again is not going to be fun. Let's take these loose. Let's get that pulled out. Looks like it'll be a 12. Dropped it. Thank goodness for this little magnet guy. I want to say, yep, that was just an O-ring. I did not want to mess with that.
What is that?
Go get me some paper towels, hurry run.
Oh. Where did they go?
They're laying down there on the ground.
so nasty.
Yeah, dude. I don't wanna.
That's long, Dad. That's long. Dad, where are you gonna use your new one?
I really need to pull that out and check it because I know it's gonna leak now. It's like, what the hell do I do?
Oh, goodness.
Shit. But now I've got this damn O-ring out. And I'm afraid it's gonna leak unless I check it and make sure it's good. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like I might have to go buy an O-ring. Alright, so I'm taking the nuts off of this secondary air injection system back here. This is going to be a beast to get to because of the wiring harness in the way. Try to just work my way down in there. Side. Like that. Open. Come on, baby, get on there. Alright guys, sorry for the long pause, but that was the son of a gun. Had to take the part of the secondary air injection system loose from the intake crossover, which was not easy. I ended up being inside prying up on that wiring harness with a pry bar to get some extra space so I could get the 12mm bolts. I ended up just bending that one back because I couldn't get to the back none of that pipe. The other one, you can see I took the pipe loose over there, and it was a little bit easier to get to than this one. This one was almost impossible. I couldn't find anything to get in there. So I took that loose from just where I could get to it from the intake crossover, and then just bent it back out of the way a little bit. Then pulled the intake crossover off. And now I can kind of see if I can get a better angle here. The bolts back here. You can see those there now. You gotta take those two out, and then there's one more hiding down below that black plastic piece. So I'm gonna take those off now and see if we can get this starter off. Alright guys, so we finally got the starter loose. Two 14mm bolts, one 12mm bolt to take this wiring harness loose here. And then we got it pulled loose. Now we're going to be fighting these two cords here. See if we can get these loose. Alright, that one's loose. And I'm pretty sure there's like a cap on this. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a 12mm right there, holding that wire on. Oh, and she's out. All All right, ladies and gentlemen, day 2 Sequoia starter and knock sensor replacement. Not gonna lie, the last 2 or 3 starter bolts yesterday about kicked my butt. So stopped there, had to go run to the parts store anyway to pick up some extra parts. Specifically these guys, I thought this was gonna really hold up the rest of the job. I thought it was gonna have to be ordered through the dealership, but luckily they had the water bypass gaskets, which there's your part number in case you're looking for it. This is a Felpro, not exactly what I wanted. I would prefer to have the Toyota stuff, but in a jam you got to do what you got to do. So these were in stock at the parts store, thank goodness. In case you're wondering what they go to this crossover here. This is like an EGR crossover piece. And when I pulled that off yesterday to get to the starter bolts, the 2 gaskets were toast. Also had to pick up some extra hose because this guy is not really giving me a lot of confidence. So probably going to change that out. I know they make a very specific hose for it at Toyota. However, time is of the essence, so that's what it's getting. I do plan on bypassing the secondary air injection system. It's just a failure point that I don't want to have be a problem for me whenever I am off-roading or out in the middle of nowhere, or really depending on this thing whenever I'm towing my camper or something like that. I don't want to have a failure in this system, so kind of pointless that system is, and I know it has a point for some states, but for our state it's not required, and therefore I don't really care about it. Also had to pick up some intake valve and throttle body cleaner because if we'll look here, this stuff is pretty rank in there. It's pretty dirty on those intake runners, and then down in there, we're gonna get to that today as well. I did do some cleaning yesterday, quite a bit more cleaning. Let me see if I can shed some light on the situation here. So down in there was really dirty. I did take the time to clean that as best I could. We're going to continue to dry that out and clean on it a little bit more to make it as good as we can get it before it goes back together. And that's why we had to do a little stop, make a little run. So we will work on that. Putting the new starter on is going to be, we'll do the starter, probably a little bit of cleaning first. I already did clean up for the gaskets on the block. Need to do just a little bit more cleaning in there. I am also going to run some seafoam. Let me know in the comments if you guys have tried this. Is it any good? We're going to run some of this to see if we can help clean up those fuel injectors a little bit. I didn't realize how bad those were, so we're going to try to clean that up a little bit. Also on the list, I'm hoping to get to using the rib nut tool to put the skid plate back on, and then we need to top off the front differential, which has a small leak that after putting aftermarket axles in, I have not been able to get to stop even after taking it to professional, so we're going to keep it topped off. And I'm also going to change this plug if I get there to make it a little easier in and out, because if you're familiar with Toyota plugs, they are not my favorite, so we're going to change that out too. All right, step 1, let's get to cleaning. All right, guys, the starter is back in. 2 14mm bolts, a 12mm bolt, bolting the electrical back on, and then putting on the secondary air injection switchover valves. I think that's what those are called. Not 100% positive on that, but those are not fun. Wrestling this black harness, no matter how I did it. I used a pry bar at one point in time with the bungee cord across the back to hold it up when I'm taking the stuff off, but there's really no help for you whenever you're putting it back on. So you kind of just have to get in there and wrestle the black harness forward and slide your arm down in behind to start the bolts. For me, it was a 2-person job. I had to get someone to turn the ratchet while I held the bolt in and started it. It was a real pain. We got that back together. Next is going to be putting this crossover back in with the 2 new gaskets, and then we'll be bolting those 2 switchover valves back to the back of this. You can see there's 4 bolts that go like that, and then those 2 switchover valves bolt back into this. So that's the next step. Stay tuned. All right, guys, switching valves are installed, and unfortunately, if you remember, when I took the vacuum hoses loose, you see one's connected, one's not. It's because one of them broke when I pulled it off, and then even after fishing through some extra of the wire, it just did not give me confidence. So we're gonna go ahead and get some extra vacuum hose and replace those vacuum lines while we're at it. But the crossover, the intake or EGR crossover is bolted in with the new gaskets. Starter is on and bolted in. I still have to do the ground wire, put that back. And now for the original reason that we're in here, we're gonna get these knock sensors switched out. It's just the 2 bolts, take them loose, put the new ones back on, and switch it out. Pretty simple stuff. If you've done this far, that's gonna be the easiest thing we do. So stay tuned, I'm gonna switch those out and hook that ground wire back up. All right, guys, we're putting in the intake gasket and getting this intake ready to go. We finished bolting up secondary air injection stuff. Had to replace one of the hoses was super hard and brittle, and I didn't have that ordered from the factory. So in the sake of time, I had to make one here. As you can see, if you come down here and look, I went and got some hose that matched up to what we were using from the factory, and I just made this. Like I said, I plan on bypassing the secondary air injection system in the near future. So for now, this hopefully will hold until I can get it bypassed. We also put a new O-ring on this pipe here. I forget what this is called, but I think it goes to the heater core and all that stuff. So it holds coolant. So there's an O-ring that goes back into the water pump and stuff back there, and that's a real pain to get to. I don't know if I can get some light on this situation. Here we go. So to get you some light, it runs back in here and it has an O-ring, and it just pops in and then you bolt it down. Also had to replace a vacuum line, which you can see I rerouted that, and it's now hooked up back there. So we're getting ready to put this intake back on. Before we do, I'm going to pull all these towels out of the cylinders. I'm going to hit it with a little valve cleaner and clean those up just a hair more before I put that back on. So stay tuned. The next step is putting the intake back on. All right, guys, sorry I got on a roll here and started putting stuff back together. Intake bolts went back in just like they came out. Put in the hoses on the back there. I still need to, nope, that's good. All the heater hose stuff is hooked up. Then run the intake bolts in. You can see one there, and then down there, they're the ones with the star bit on them as well. And there's 3 down the middle and 2 studs in the back and 2 studs in the front. We've already went over all that. So I'm really just reversing the process from here. I started hooking up vacuum lines and gas lines, put it back. Gas line in the back's put back on. Just buttoning things back up now from this point on. I just bolted all this back on. So now I just need to go back in and plug up the coils and the injectors and a couple more miscellaneous odds and ends here. A couple hoses down here. I put one on, but the other one needs to be hooked back up. And then we'll be ready to test fire this guy and see how it goes. So stay tuned. All right, guys, we buttoned it up. Plugged in the fuel injection. Fuel injectors, all the vacuum lines, plug everything back up, test fired, and we're all good. New starter's working. So far, no knock sensor code, P0333. Seems to be running better than it did before, which is awesome. About to take it down the road, and this will be the end of the starter project. Man, was it a bear. It was definitely not an easy job. I don't recommend it for someone who is not an experienced wrencher. Pay somebody to do it if you're not comfortable with doing hard stuff. It was definitely a challenge. No real specialty tools needed, just very difficult for the average wrencher. Overall, seems to be running much better though.